In an ultimate Minecraft social experiment, 1,000 Minecraft players were randomly scattered across 4 massive islands, each its own nation and its own unique biome. The players only knew one thing: if they die, they are dead forever. 250 of these players were placed into the snow biome. These players were given no help or guidance. It was entirely up to them to gather resources, elect a leader, build a society, and if it came down to it, go to war. I present to you the State Social Experiment. As the experiment began, the entire population of State 3 was stuck and trapped in a massive wasteland, with nothing but snow and ice surrounding them for miles. But they got lucky. They found trees and quickly began working towards establishing themselves as a single group. However, they knew they needed order, so they quickly began creating jobs, networks, and eventually a full-blown government. The lumber division was trying to increase the wood production for the entire nation, while the farming team gathered as much food as they could and looked for any animals that they could breed for the future. There was the mining team, who were there to gather resources for the entire nation. The last team that was set up was known as the Overseers. Their entire goal was making sure all of the workers were doing their job correctly, ensuring supplies were making it from one side of the nation to the other side, and ensuring that all members were safe. While this was going on, a group of people who called themselves the Greater Good, ran by Kumazaki, secretly met and vowed to take down State 3 no matter the cost or how long it may take. They would draft their plans and get to work immediately. Meanwhile, the first election was held, and Solev was announced the leader of State 3. He said he would protect the nation at all costs. His leadership was quickly questioned, as soon after being elected, he executed a civilian of the state for theft. He claimed he was setting an example, so this would never happen again. And that would mark the end of Day 1. Day 2 was mostly uneventful. The nation as a whole began to grow and prepare for later days. The farms were expanded and the economy was beginning to boom. Miners were able to get full diamond for some of the higher members like Solev, while everyone else was beginning to get full iron armor for the time being. The hunt for people sabotaging the government was still on, but there was no luck. While the team worked, Solev organized a meeting with the jungle team. In this meeting, a secret alliance was formed. In the event of the snow biome being attacked, the jungle would assist in war efforts. This secret alliance would become one of the most important actions the two teams took. As night began to fall, a member called Caves and Cliffs built a statue of Cardi B and was swiftly executed by Solev. Solev was slowly becoming a dictator, and people across the world were not happy with this. But for now, peace remained. As the teams worked, a possible spy was found in the nations. On patrol, an officer appointed by Solev noticed someone hiding in the wasteland underground. After telling others, they raided the secret base and found a member who went by Baloney. Immediately, they began to question him on what he was doing and why he was there. But Solev did not want him killed for now, as they are interrogating him. Back at the main base, the nation of State 3 built a shrine for a mysterious man who was always flying around their base. They began to worship this man and call him a god. They began to construct a larger shrine in the mountains. With this shrine in place, Solev began to force his people to pray to the shrine and donate offerings to the shrine. They named the god Boy Jedi. Back in the interrogation, Baloney was hiding something, and right as the day was ending, he admitted to sabotaging the nation. As Day 4 started, Baloney immediately began running from the officers. Solev quickly ordered the execution of Baloney. As chase continued, Baloney finally turned around to fight, quickly dying against the 4 officers who had been chasing him. Baloney's execution quickly spread around the nation and around other nations, like the desert and plains. The desert did not agree with the dictatorship that had been formed, while the plains nation was split, with members such as Hitori Cage liking what was going on, and Iwaj who wanted to kill Solev and destroy the dictatorship. The execution has also made way to the Greater Good, which has grown in numbers. Kumazaki decided that due to the death of Baloney, they would need to attack and fast. By the farming lands, a poor farmer who went by Foy1 was farming and minding his own business when a member from the Greater Good, known as Atomic Miner, came up behind him and brutally killed him. Officers immediately went to Foy1's corpse, looking for the murderer, but they were not able to find him. While they were searching for Atomic, the shrine built in the middle of the city was attacked and vandalized, including an item from the god. The god was angry at the nation to let this attack happen and was ready to rain fury on them. Due to the attacks, everyone was on high alert when an officer noticed a member stealing. An execution was ordered and Dark was killed for stealing. As the day finally came to an end, the hunt remained for Atomic Miner. Kumazaki had finally begun to launch a new plan. Aside from sabotaging, he secretly met with the desert, the plains, and the jungle, trying to form a secret alliance that would overthrow Solev and his dictatorship. The goal was for Kumazaki to offer Solev to surrender and step down as dictator so Kumazaki could take over, and if Solev refused, the plains, the desert, and the jungle would attack simultaneously from all directions. The jungle team, who previously had an alliance with State 3, quickly alerted Solev about the coup, and the hunt for Kumazaki and his members began. As the hunt went on, a diplomacy team was created with the goal of making peace with the desert and plains to avoid a total world war. They would begin diplomacy missions immediately. As day 6 began, the hunt for Kumazaki continued. An officer claimed he had noticed him and began to follow all the way to a secret base. When the officer got to the base, he waited for reinforcements. They found Kumazaki and executed him for treason against the state. The death of Kumazaki meant the end of the greater good. For the first time in a while, State 3 was at peace, finally able to rest. On day 7, the gods of the world mysteriously granted a day of peace across all nations. During this day, all nations seized this opportunity to build and complete structure. The shrine in the mountains of State 3 finally were completed, and a throne room was even put in. People began to come here to worship the god even further. Meanwhile, in the jungle, a fortress called the Wooden Fence was built, intended to be an unbreakable building that could not be overrun. Back at the homeland, Solev formalized his alliance, and it became known as the Solev Union, a peace treaty between the jungle and the snow. The diplomats that State 3 had sent out began to make contact with the others. With little success, they were met with intimidation and anger from the desert. However, a branch of the plains biome who hated the leader Iwaj welcomed the diplomats and were willing to work together at all costs. In the snow, people worked and prepared for the rising world tension that was happening all around them. In the plains, Iwaj was attacked by some of Hitori Cage's members and was killed in action. The people who killed Iwaj ran to the snow biome for refuge, in which Solev greeted them happily and took them all in. The remaining plains members were not too happy and dispatched an assassin, known as Luigi Toan, to wipe out Solev and other major leaders of State 3. State 3 continued as normal with no idea that an assassin had just begun his journey. On a diplomatic mission to make peace with the desert, one of the diplomats was attacked and killed. This raised the tensions between State 3 and the desert even further. Solev, however, did not want to make a big deal out of this, and many disagreed, but they went back to work. Everyone knew tensions were rising. Day 10 had started with what had seemed to be a mostly peaceful day until the assassin, Luigi Toan, finally arrived. He located Solev and began his attack.
He pressed him in the water! Kill him!
Oh god, yeah, you're gonna
Yes!
While the attack was raging on, 2 members from the desert arrived at the main base to deliver the head of a diplomat. While leaving, one of the members, known as Border, snuck off and snuck into the walls of an outpost. He would remain there for a while. War. War never changes. Border, who was hiding in a wall, waited for an unknown ally to arrive to strike. Solev and his people began to get suspicious of someone named Gian, who may have been a spy, but they could not confirm it. Moments later, however, Gian revealed himself as a spy, as suspected, and attacked the outpost with Border. State 3 took many casualties in this surprise attack, and more desert members began to pile in, overrunning many places, including the capital and the shrine. The jungle was quickly alerted of the attack and activated their defenses, and called all of their men to prepare for battle. Solev ordered all of his men to retreat while they still could, and they set off to the jungle. Solev's army arrived in the jungle and quickly began heading towards the wooden fence in preparation for the desert and plains to strike. Finally, when they arrived, an all-out war began. As the battle raged on, the enemy got closer, and as the enemy got closer, Solev decided to make a choice. Solev sacrificed himself for the country, dying in battle. The war ended soon after, as almost all members of State 3 had died, and almost all jungle members had fallen. War had ended, lives had been lost. It was now time for society to rebuild. The desert thrived and built monuments, but the story of Solov and State 3 was not forgotten. They would live on somewhere, someday.